We just had the unbelievable pleasure of speaking with Peter Holt, who is the managing partner of the San Antonio Spurs, among many other exciting ventures. And it is safe to say that Peter Holt is happy, not satisfied.
To say
That
the
was an unbelievable episode.
Yeah.
So many takeaways that I am going to hold with me that I think people listening will really resonate with. Examples of leadership, examples of his like mental toughness, the way that he's found empathy, how he cares for others, how he serves.
That life happens in the gray.
Yeah, that things aren't binary,
Yep.
that achievements are byproducts of the process. He didn't say it in that way, but it was that exact concept. It was truly the most happy, not satisfied conversation I think we've ever had with somebody that's not us.
And also San Antonio, talking about the Spurs' positive impact, their mission for positive impact in San Antonio. That is their guiding light as an organization, and it has been since his extended family took over the organization decades ago. And so it was just so inspiring to hear what their true mission is that guides their processes on a day-to-day basis.
Yeah, so stick around, listen to the episode. You will not regret hearing from Peter Holt, managing partner of the San Antonio Spurs. This episode is brought to you by Morrison Creative. Storytelling is such a powerful tool, and Morrison Creative is a company that Ellie and I founded to help brands and companies discover, develop, and deploy their stories. So check out morrisoncreative.co if you'd like to learn more, and we'll get back to the episode. Hi, everyone, and welcome to Happy Not Satisfied, the show where we talk to people about finding joy in the process of growth. Today, I am joined by my amazing co-host, Ellie Morrison, and we have a super special guest. He is managing partner of the San Antonio Spurs. He's also managing partner of Iron Spring venture capital firm, and he's the CEO of Holt Group. Welcome to Happy Not Satisfied, Peter Holt.
Yeah, thanks. Happy to be here. Excited to visit.
Yeah, absolutely. So I want to jump right into something that I find really interesting, that I think the world of sports is so obviously tied into this idea of being happy, not satisfied, I would say, and like finding joy and growth and always getting better, but especially professional sports. And when what you do is in front of the public all the time, like I would love to hear from you how you define success, how you're able to like weather some of the low moments, and how if it was all about the achievements, then you'd only be happy when you won the championship, right? Which feels a little unsustainable, which the Spurs have won 5 championships, so I'm sure that feels great. But what about the times in between? Like, what is that mindset like? How do you get through every day and not get wrapped up in, I'm only happy if we win?
Yeah, it's a good question. I think for me personally, and I think generally our investor group and our family and most people around the organization, hopefully we try to remember where we started and the reason why our family got involved with the Spurs at all was because there was, in the mid-90s, there was a threat that the Spurs were going to be moved out of San Antonio because the current or the ownership group at the time was having a hard time building a new arena, getting a new arena built via partnership of public financing and private financing. And so we at the time were just fans. I was born in Corpus, and we were fans in Corpus, and then we moved to San Antonio, and we were big fans, and going to the games and the Alamo Dome, and remember running around as a kid, like trying to grab the Coyote's tail, and that I don't think I knew a player's name, but I knew the Coyote, like
Absolutely.
and so when my parents were amongst other kind of community people in San Antonio, and leaders were invited to buy into the Spurs and hopefully stabilize the ownership group in an effort to keep the team in San Antonio. I vividly remember we had kind of a family meeting about that, and I think I was 8 or 9 at the time, and you obviously know like where I voted, I was like, Coyote, like cool, but I have vivid memories of them saying they didn't talk really about basketball. They didn't say like, oh, we have a chance to win championships, or like a chance to like make money, or a chance. They talked about just the joy that the team had brought our family, and the joy the team brought San Antonio, and the unity and the excitement, and just the impact Spurs youth camps, like just. Yeah. They talked really about San Antonio and the community and the people and how much the Spurs mean to the city, and that's really what they talked about. And so I feel like that my kind of DNA and the leaders that have been around the organization for a long time have this higher purpose of positive impact and really driving it down to positive impact on the community. And I think the definition of community has morphed over time, but it's rooted here in San Antonio. And so having that higher purpose, I think, is really helpful. And then also, the year after my parents became the controlling owners of the Spurs was our worst year in history. And so there were a lot of, understandably frustration around. It was also Coach Pop's first year.
He almost didn't make it that first year, right? It was a little. I've read that.
Yeah, that's that's an unsubstantiated.
Yeah, all right,
rumor.
fair. That was only from me. That was not from Peter.
Yeah, that's
He was a Bulls fan at the time, growing up in Chicago.
I will say, and we'll get into that. But the
man.
Spurs have won my heart. Yeah, we'll get into that.
I think that first year really set the tone for win or lose. We're going to be a values-based organization that is our first mission is to have positive impact. And don't get me wrong or get them wrong, highly competitive.
Sure.
But kind of this view that it's not binary.
I love that.
And
such a good way of putting that.
And
yeah.
so I think that and what it led to was getting Tim Duncan, that worst year ever.
Yeah.
And so then we went on a pretty intense winning streak. But that first year, there's definitely stories of people, other owners or coaches or players that made light of who's this kind of like local tractor guy and this coach that has never coached, never been a head coach in the NBA, really hadn't had head coaching experience in a big way in other arenas as well, and they're sending the message pretty clearly that win or lose, we're going to do the next right thing. We're not going to always get it right, but like that's our moniker. And there was a lot of judgment of that. There was a lot of judgment of you're now in sport. Maybe you could do that in business or over there or in this or in philanthropy, but you can't. If you're going to do that, you're not going to win. Kind of a moniker. Interesting. And so it was. I think it was really. It's been proven out that. If you keep doing the next right thing, generally good things will happen, whether that's on the court or off the court. And so, long-winded answer to your question, but I think we try to stay rooted in our foundation of no matter if we're winning games or losing games, we're going to that's not going to be our only judgment of success. And we believe that we can win at the highest level on the court while also maintaining our soul and maintaining who we are. Yep. And maintaining kind of our higher purpose, which is positive impact. And so I say that gives me a lot of support internally, because we're on a stretch right now where it's been tough. It's been a challenging. We're in a phase of our journey where we're having to rebuild our team. And but again, I think that the example of Victor or some of our other players that have come to us, that you keep doing the next right thing and good things will happen. So that's what we believe. And then I think the other thing is just generally most everything that we do, whether it's at the Spurs or just in general, is very kind of long-term thinking. And so I think that helps us as well take some deep breaths when short-term issues or short-term results aren't maybe exactly how we want it. Our view is pretty long-term. So I think those are a couple things that help us focus more on the journey versus just the outcome. And then I would say just along that way, we've been so lucky to be surrounded by amazing players, coaches, trainers, like just, business people, ticket sales people that you just see them have such joy in the journey and the process, and trust and respect for the process, that it is infectious. It's infectious to see, players like Tim or Mont, players that they're going to do their shooting routine or they're going to do their family routine, or no matter what, like no matter if they won the championship or the MVP or they had surgery or they got knocked out, or they didn't make the playoffs, they're just super committed to that next thing. And I think that's infectious, because my personal style is a bit impatient. And so I need constant reminders of, okay, I'm really attracted to that, even though I'm not feeling it right now. So yeah.
Man, I don't even know where to start. Like that was
Mic
everything.
drop, we're done.
Yeah, everything that you just like defined happy, not satisfied through the Spurs organization. And it makes me love the organization even more. And so much of what you're talking about it boils down to the culture that you guys have built in the organization. And you talk about all these amazing people, from the ticket sales people to the players and everyone in between. But I think those people are attracted to the organization because of this culture that you've established, and you've been so steadfast in your vision for it. And whether you're winning or losing or whatever, you're sticking to it. That is inspiring, and I feel like so universally applicable. And every organization I could think of could use like a dose of that.
Sure.
And so, I guess that's not really a question. That's just me kind of being inspired by what you just said, and like even more of a fan of the organization hearing that. And your idea of like always doing the next right thing and all this stuff about process, it reminds me of something that we talk about, is like this idea that achievements are byproducts of the process. And so that's exactly kind of what you're talking about with, sticking to the long-term plan. It doesn't matter for the players whether they're hurt or they're not, or they're this or they're that, they're going to do their routine. And then lo and behold, you look back and, we won 5 championships. Like we were consistent and we did what we were supposed to do. We didn't worry about like the next news story that came out and we need to adjust and overreact. It's like, we believe in what we're doing and the achievements will come because of that. Is that something that you guys actively think about or talk about in the organization?
I think that, yesterday, I think it's a nuanced conversation.
Yeah.
Because, as humans, we feel very comfortable. Most humans feel very comfortable with black and white.
Yes.
It's just a very comforting place to have that binary thinking and win or lose. There's some million monikers that like validate that.
Yep.
Right.
And yesterday, actually, with our leadership team at Holt Group, we kind of did this thought exercise where we paired up with folks in our leadership team and walked through, tried to answer the question: is the destination, the journey, which one's more important? And it was really interesting to hear and see and participate in that dialogue, because there was some healthy debate around it, and some statements like, well, if you don't know the destination, aren't you just lost? Is that is that really a journey if you don't know where you're going? Which makes sense to me. But it also, if you take it the other way around and say, hey, if you are on a robust and powerful journey, then the destination will be great, even if you don't know. And so I think it's nuanced. I think that quite honestly, both are important. For example, at the Spurs, we explicitly define that one of our pillars of success is building championship winning teams, and so, but right alongside it is positive community impact. And then, the third one is financial strength. And, we've had some very healthy debates when there's actionable decisions that you could maybe argue. You could argue
Yeah.
like, well, which one are we doing? And I hate to say it, but like that's where leadership matters. That's
Right.
where maybe making some tough decisions matters, and having some humility that you may not be perfect, you may not get it perfectly right. But maybe to answer your question a little bit more explicitly, I think Pop has done an amazing job of focusing most of his attention towards the journey. And it's well publicized now, which I think he hates, but Pounding the Rock is his moniker. And it's a kind of a fable that is written about a stonecutter that a man comes to witness, and he's hitting this big boulder the same place every time, and kind of the end of the story is you never know which blow will open the rock.
Right.
Now you could like maybe really pick that apart and say, hey, well, that guy had a destination, right? He wanted to break apart the rock so he could build something or whatever it is.
Yeah.
But I think the real power in the story is the consistent blows, right? That he trusts, his tools, his experience, his process, and he knows that the outcome may not be exactly the break he wants, but if he does it at the same time, generally the outcome will be pretty good. So, but I'll say, like, for me personally, that can, like I was saying earlier, I need constant reminders and people that are supporting that mindset, because a lot of times I think it's natural to get hung up on a goal, or like those are, I don't think those are bad things,
Right.
goal setting or aspiration or vision setting. I think those are good things. They're very good thought processes, but if you over rotate and get too caught up in it, you maybe forget what it's going to take to get there. Or I think most recently in the last couple of years, a belief and some experiences that I've had have shown me that it's actually in a weird way limiting. Even if you have a really grandiose, you think you have a grandiose goal or destination, technically it could be limiting, right? So if you say, man, I don't know, I'm really into weightlifting. I want to be able, and I can lift 50 pounds right now on bench press, just the bar. I want to lift 500 pounds, right? Like at the time that seems grandiose, but technically it could be limiting, right? Technically you could lift 505 pounds.
Right.
And so I think that's been a new rhythm that I've tried to get in personally, and try to emphasize to those around me that an abundance mindset is a little bit scary, but can be freeing if you really get into it.
Ellie knows me so well
I
that
know.
like every word coming out of your mouth, she's like, this is like therapy for Dan.
Yes, exactly.
It's so perfect.
It's all so wonderful. And I want to go back to the San Antonio subject, because as a child, I remember when the first time was in '99, right?
Yep.
What that felt like when we were kids,
Sure.
and watching the Spurs, not just win, but watching a city, an entire city, no matter who you were, put flags on your car, and that you were driving down the highway, like rally around such an incredible organization. That positive impact clearly was the mission, and it has always been such an amazing community unifier here, no matter whether they're winning or not winning a championship, but growing, along the way. And I am not a huge sports person or sports fan. I was more of the arts, but I will never forget being a sports fan or Spurs fan, like my entire, preteen, teen. It was a huge thing. And I think I've always felt like this is a very San Antonio specific, like we are such a special city because of people like your family and the other, leaders who stepped up originally to say, hey, we can't let this organization fail.
Right.
We need to do this for everybody else. And I would love to hear kind of your San Antonio story and why you are so passionate about clearly not moving away, staying here,
Sure.
stepping into this. This is a massive responsibility to steward
Sure.
the community impact in this way. And I know at times it must feel heavy.
Sure.
But I'd love to hear your perspective on your San Antonio story and what it's meant to you to take over this organization.
Yeah, I mean, my kind of San Antonio story is a bit odd in the fact that I was born in Corpus, and so my mother's family has deep roots in Corpus, and my father's family as well. And we moved up here when I was 3, and lived kind of in Terrell Hills actually for a very short period of time. And then my mom is in the kind of ranching and farming world. And so we moved to Blanco because she raised cattle and horses. And, but my dad always worked in the city, and we came to school, and drove. And so, I had an interesting upbringing in the fact that we participated and loved parts of San Antonio, but I also had kind of an outsider, a bit of a view, growing up. And so, but I, vividly remember that growing up, we would come into Spurs games, and if they were late, we would stay at the St. Anthony, afterwards,
We got
So
married
great.
to St. Anthony.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
There you go. And go to school at St. Mary's Hall the next day,
Yeah.
and that kind of
Yeah.
stuff. And so the Spurs, it was a very organic feeling where the Spurs were such a draw, and just a unifier. And I just remember going to Spurs camps or in the Alamo Dome. There used to be a fan fiesta behind the curtain.
Yes, I remember.
Just weird things. You look back, it's
Yeah.
like, that's not normal.
Yeah.
But I just remember playing with other kids and growing up and our family. And it was just a place where, I mean, it'd be utopian to say like, oh, you didn't know like what neighborhood one guy was from, or like
Yeah.
rich or poor, or whatever. Black or white, like that'd be a little bit utopian, but not really. Like at the same time, it all felt comfortable because you had that common ground. You were wearing the Fiesta colors or black and silver, or there was like some connection. And even now, even if you go to like a little taqueria or a coffee shop and it's common ground, it's a
Right.
unifier. And so I think that just seeing that and feeling that, and even when fans or ticket holders or players, even when people are mad at us, I there's such a level of care and
Yeah.
and passion, and even when there's that swings to maybe being upset, I feel really grateful because it's like, oh wow, they really care. Like they're watching. There are people who are
Right.
watching and feeling
Yeah.
every step that we make. And so to your point about responsibility, of course, like I'm a person, so of course there are times where I feel anxious or stressed, or there's a weight. At the same time, I feel that this is a big part of my heart's desire, and that in a kind of a meandering way, I was given an incredible opportunity to have direct engagement, and with the support of all these wonderful people, whether that's my sister who I'm partners with, or our family, or the broader investor group, or RC and Pop, or just the community. It sounds a bit trite, but I feel there's way more fun and gratitude versus burden and responsibility. So now I don't. That's not every day, but most days.
Yeah. I think things are trite because they're true often.
Yeah.
There's a reason people have said them so many times, because once you've lived it and you experience it, you're like, oh, that's why people say it so much. What you've said that really is like living with me is this idea of things not being binary. and how important that is to the culture of organizations that are involved, especially I think in something competitive, which really that's almost everything, right? Business is competitive. What I've been involved with, even with like marching band and this thing called drum corps, which is like marching band on steroids essentially in the summers. It's all very competitively driven, but my messaging was always about the things that didn't relate to competition and how the outcomes would take care of themselves. But you still care about the competition, which is what you're saying. And so I'm stealing that because I love that like it's not binary. You can lean into the process and you can care about, building positive relationships and all those things, but you also want to win. Like no one doesn't want to win. It's human nature.
Yeah.
And so like having that nuance and not just saying it's yes or no, win or lose, totally binary is so powerful. And I think we need that everywhere in society, whether it's like the relationships or politics or the news or whatever. Like we need more of the gray. And the fact that that's part of what you guys talk about makes so much sense and such a good way of putting it. And one thing, I'm sure you have other questions. I could sit here all day now, and we won't, don't worry. But the idea of goal setting is something I also think about a lot because it's like you said, goals can be limiting. I think goals can be unnecessarily stressful in a weird way. But it's also like you don't want to not have goals.
Sure.
But what I've started to kind of think about is this idea of like having productive goals versus unproductive goals. So, and I'd be curious if you have anything that is parallel in your world, but like for me, this is very specific, but there's the all-state band, right? So if you're really good at your instrument, you have to pass all these rounds of auditions and then you go to all-state. Okay. It's like a really big deal.
Yep.
So a kid might have a goal that's like, I want to make all-state. But to me, that's an unproductive goal because ultimately you can't control that, right? You can't control what the other people are doing. You can't control what the judges decide. So I would frame it as like, I'm going to practice these pieces of music for 2 hours a day, 5 days a week for this many weeks.
Yeah.
And that's the goal because you can achieve that goal. And then you might get even better at the music than you even thought you could. And you also might make all-state, So to me, that's a goal I know I can achieve. It's productive. It's not stressful because I know I can do it. Does that type of thing exist for you with the team, with you personally? Like, I would be curious because the way you talk about goals, it feels similar.
Yeah, I've been really lucky that I've had people in my life that have really helped me shape my view on what's the most impactful, what are the most positive and how can I have the most positive impact on my life and my rhythms and others and be of service to others? And one of the things I did really early on was a life themes matrix. And this guy that's I have a kind of a weird view on mentorship, but this guy's for sure a mentor. I think he was more like a God-given mentor than like, I'm going to go find a mentor and like, we're going to work on this. Like that doesn't work with my style. And so, the life themes matrix really kind of helped me shape my personal goal setting and my view on it. And really what it goes through is kind of physical, emotional, spiritual. It kind of goes through various, the like big categories of your life. And then it really kind of mostly asks questions of like, how do you see yourself? And how do you see yourself and where do you spending your time? And you kind of answer that question and it goes out periods of time. It's like, 6 months, a year, 5 years, 10 years, 30 years, whatever. And that was really helpful because the impetus to get you thinking is not about like, I want to, there's not like a mini objective. It's more like, how do you see yourself?
Yes.
And so that really helped me diffuse this. I've always had an innate aversion. I don't know if that's ADD or just like, low performance, but like an aversion to like explicit goal setting. It doesn't drive good behaviors for me. And it doesn't help me help others. It takes me out of a service mindset. And so that more focus on themes is way more helpful for me. And so, like spiritual life. Like I wanted to have a close relationship with God, and so that's pretty hard to define that in like a goal. You know, I don't know how to measure it. I don't know how to measure that. I don't know
I
how
will
somebody
pray 2 times per day. Right?
Yeah. I mean, I guess you could. Like technically you
could.
but like that really helped me build a foundation to where most things that I was involved with, even if we were setting goals, like a sales goal, right? Like I don't think there's anything wrong with those things.
Yeah.
As long as it's not driving behavior that is more focused on short-term outcomes versus higher purpose outcomes. And so I think there's a lot of nuance out there. I think I'm a big believer that we thank the Lord that we're all different people and that we have different drivers.
Yeah.
And so I think there may be certain personality types or backgrounds or experiential people that may be really helpful to have more concrete goals. I just am a believer that there has to be the higher purpose first, and that if you have the higher purpose and you really believe in it, that and then you defer to action just in general, then you'll most times exceed your goals, or like I was saying, you know, the outcome will be better than you originally expected.
Defer to action. I love that. What did you say this was called? Life goal?
A life
matrix?
themes matrix.
Can I Google this?
You might be able to.
Okay,
I don't
okay.
know. It's a good question.
All right.
Love
I
that.
haven't.
We'll
I
Google
haven't. Yeah.
I personally identify with the feeling that you're talking about. We are yin and yang, and I am much more driven by the higher purpose behavior. You know, behavior to achieve the higher purpose. But where I struggled until Dan really helped me was the action part, because I would get so focused on
Right.
the higher purpose and have the vision and all these things, but I couldn't. You know, I was kind of stuck on the day-to-day processes that would help me achieve
Sure.
that higher purpose. And so I'm so interested to hear you talk about this, and then knowing like what your situation and your personality type and how
Yeah.
your behaviors are.
Yeah.
It's fascinating because I think like there are different personality
Sure.
types, and I totally am in your camp. But it's difficult to kind of use both, right?
Yeah.
Like you
Well,
have
that's
to
the
kind of.
defer to action part that I
Exactly.
think that you felt you struggled with.
I did.
Yeah.
I always did.
Yeah, but I think you just found one of the big secret sauces in life, which I still have a hard time, because I was, you know, my kind of one of my steady states is, let me just do this myself.
Yeah.
That's one of my
Yeah.
steady states.
Yeah.
I feel very comfortable. You know, it's probably an issue with control and
Yep.
self-centeredness, honestly.
I feel
it really
you on both
is.
of those. Yeah.
I could do it better. I could do it faster.
Yeah.
You know, like there's just less issues, but almost, maybe not even almost. Maybe I should just say everything. I actually, maybe I should do this exercise. Like go write down what I think the biggest like wins or successes or the times I've felt the best in my life. I would say, I'm trying to think of one that's not 100% involves somebody else.
Yep.
My wife, you know, my sister, you know, when we, you know, started a new company, like the first hire, like they did way more than I did.
Yeah.
You know, if I'm really being honest, you know, or they held the mirror up and said, you saying you want this, but you're doing that. You know, like, you know, asking, you know, those questions that come about that's like, wait, you're telling me something, you're not really asking a question. You know? And it's like, I would say the vast majority of like the times where I felt the most fulfilled and that just inner spark of joy and fulfillment and satisfaction has involved somebody else.
Yeah.
It's involved even if I had a personal win or something, you know, like it involved somebody else. And so I think you just hit it on the head that you know, you worked with Dan, like,
Yeah.
or you married Dan, whatever it is, like
All of it.
above.
All of the above.
and I definitely experienced that, and so
Yeah.
I have to. There are these rules and patterns in my life, and some of them I have no idea how they got there, and I should probably say it probably doesn't matter. They're there, and I have to own them, and then have some early warning signals around, am I defaulting to those, and have they worked in the past? Or am I defaulting to maybe something that's a little more uncomfortable, but it has just outlandish outcomes, and not even outlandish outcomes, like amazing, just amazing feelings alongside of it, and most times that involves other people. For me,
I love that perspective. I mean, it is so true. Anything that you do, that you need the support of others. And I think that also goes to your collaborative mindset, your service mindset, your strength as a leader. And what's also struck me about you in the past several years that I've been kind of following things is that you have so much humility and empathy, and the way that you speak about people and how nothing is binary. There's all this gray matter in between, and that's where we really need to focus. That's not always what you hear, or what you would expect, what one would expect to hear from a leader of so many large and thriving organizations. I personally appreciate that about you so much, because you are clearly running these massive companies with such an open heart and an open mind. And I think in today's world, that is what we need. It's different. It's different now.
Yeah, I would say though that, like, again, I don't know if my steady state is empathetic. I wouldn't like call my, and so because I do have a healthy critic in me, I have he's pretty healthy in there, and or maybe she, I don't know, or they, but I have found that. And I'm a true believer of this, even though the critic in me sometimes wants to not believe this, that most people feel the best. They get that dose of adrenaline or serotonin or gratitude that is unmanufactured by themselves when they are of service to others. I think that. Yep. I really do. And I have now, there's probably, you could probably debate a million examples of people, this murderer or this terrible CEO or whatever, like, well, how did they, I think it's still in there for them. I do. And somehow it got warped. And I believe that because I've done that. I've warped my sense of empathy or service. I've done that. I've been selfish, or I've been too critical, or I've done that, and it has had negative impact. Yeah. But if I look back again, like the times where I felt the best, like when my eyes have watered, is usually not when I'm like, oh, we had a record sales revenue year. Those feel good. I'm not gonna lie, those feel good. Yeah. But the times where I'm like, man, it just like you actually feel love, or you feel like you're blushing, those times 90+% of the time, or when somebody is like, saying they're grateful to you for X, or they're grateful to your organization, or your service to somebody makes an impact on their life. Like, that's when I feel the best. And so if that's the case, then I guess I am an empathetic person. I just have to really be self-aware. And for me, at least, I think there's probably more people that are probably have higher self-awareness, but for me, I have to have other people in my life. I just cannot isolate. And sometimes I really like to isolate. This decision, I know what to do. Like, I just really know what to do. It's going to be so easy if I just do it myself. And it almost always goes better when somebody else is involved. And even if it's exactly the decision I made or whatever, but I think that is so important for me. And I think maybe an understated need for us as people is to have other people.
Yeah. Yeah. In this conversation, I have felt from you that you have tendencies, like almost a default mode. And I'm saying this because it's how I am. I call it like kind of like spiraling, where you let the tendencies that maybe aren't productive take over a little bit.
Oh, yeah.
But it sounds like you have found really effective ways to redirect your inner monologue.
Yep.
And I don't know if those are like routines or habits or conscious thoughts or like, and this is a tough question probably, but I'm just selfishly curious. Like, how do you get yourself from I'm spiraling into the unproductive place where I'm isolating, I'm making decisions by myself, I'm being a little bit selfish, I'm not being empathetic, into all these great things that you're talking about? How do you make that switch? How do you stay on the right path?
I think that I used to have a belief that as long as my external person or was generally doing good things, that my mind and my inner monologue didn't matter. And I've realized probably in the last 5 years that that's bullshit. That it's going to manifest itself in some way, which is half freeing, half really scary. Because sometimes my mind, I'm like, you're a psycho. Like,
I feel
We
like
all
you are,
think,
you're crazy. Like you're judging, you know, like, cause I can judge, I can be criticizing, I can be like a friend of mine regularly says, you know, if your inner dialogue was sitting next to you in the car as you're driving, would you like want to hug him or kick him out of the car?
Interesting.
And it's like a lot of times I don't think I'd be friends with that person.
Yeah.
And so it's like, whoa, why, you know? And so I guess what I'm saying is I've had a pretty big turning recently where I do believe that anything that I'm really dwelling on mentally, emotionally, spiritually will manifest itself. I don't know how. And so if that's more negative than positive, then that will manifest itself.
I love that.
And so I guess to your question then, some ways that help me redirect. I think where my natural state is to do some physical things, you know, which work, but sometimes are Band-Aids, but I still do them,
Right.
you know. You know, working out, eating well, sleeping, like all the core areas that make me function well, I need to do those. Like that's a foundation, and that's really important. So if I'm dwelling on something, that's usually where I start. Is am I eating like crap? Am I consuming too much social media? You know, whatever. Like my physical stuff.
Yeah.
I think that's the first thing. The second one is, you know, where am I spending my time? And am I spending them around people that are they don't have to be saints, but that are generally like trying to be of service to others, trying to be a good person. And so am I spending time with those people? Am I like calling them even if I can't spend physical time? And then, you know, I would say another one is gratitude. Am I participating actively in gratitude? Am I making gratitude lists? You know, I'm part of a kind of a email chain that is a daily gratitude list. That's a helpful reminder. Now, sometimes, I'm not gonna lie, like I delete every one of those.
Yeah.
You know, I'm actively choosing not to be gratitude. Use SOBs. You know, but for the most part, it's a great reminder to that. You know, what I really have versus what I think I have. But I think lately one of my hopes is really really kind of turning to spiritual faith, and a big help for me has been kind of, you know, golden key, I guess, is redirecting towards. I really believe that we're all spiritual beings in a physical world, but I have a hard time acting like that. I act like a physical being in a spiritual world. And so that's a shift that I'm really trying to explore. And when I've gotten into that flow and ability to redirect, it's the outcomes have been very hard to judge objectively, but the peace and freedom that I've experienced, even if for short periods of time, have been really eye-opening for me. Because I'm that guy that's like, you know, like doing relaxing things, and like my mom, like I'm like, where's my notepad? you know, and like it's silly. I mean, it is.
No,
like,
she's laughing
I'm
because
laughing
you're
because-
describing me.
Yeah,
Yeah. Yeah, she's not laughing at you.
like I love to get
Yeah.
massages, and I was asking my friends. We like went to this thing, and like multiple people got massages like within multiple days. And I like was thinking after when I was like, "Hey, what do you think about when you're at the massage?" And my friend was like, "I don't know what you're talking about. Like, what do you mean?" I was like, "What do you think? Like, what are you thinking? Like, what's going through your head?" He's like, "Well, the first couple of minutes, I'm thinking like, am I comfortable? Like, is this gonna be good?" And then I kind of like black out, and I'm like, "What?
Yeah.
I've never done that in my life.
No.
I've never
Yeah.
like I've never not once have I done that. You know, I mean maybe one. You know, I'm exaggerating.
I know what you mean.
But in general, like I don't. You know, and
Yep.
or like, you know, we were like went on this vacation. I was saying like we're sitting there and you know looking at the ocean and like I was getting a little anxious. I was like it's too relaxing.
Yep.
And so like my steady state is a bit neurotic and a bit, and so I really have to. Again, have those people around me, but you know, keep peeling. Another good kind of advisor talks about peeling the onion back, and there are going to be times in your life where you're going to hit these plateaus, and are you willing to peel the onion back? And so I usually am not willing to peel the onion back, but when I surround myself with those type of people, it's kind of hard not to.
I love this so much.
Yeah. See, I'm not alone.
You're not alone. You're not alone. You're the opposite of me, but you're not alone. I'm so
What do
glad
you
that
do?
we're
What do
having-
you do, Dan? What do you do?
I mean, honestly,
trying to work on-
Yeah,
on
exactly
figuring
what
it
you're
out.
saying with like building the foundation, like exercising, eating
Yeah.
well, sleeping are things that I'm pretty diehard about. But sometimes that's still not enough to
Yeah.
like turn the thoughts off that you don't want to be going.
The hamster wheel.
Yeah. And so,
Yeah.
I mean, I think a lot about my inner monologue because it's, you know, it's with you all day,
Yeah.
you know, and I really liked you describing the person sitting next to you in the car. Do you want to kick them out or do you want to give them a hug? I think it's kind of like a combination of both. It's like you feel so bad for them that you want to hug them, but they're also so irritating that you want to kick them out. Like literally you're talking about being at the beach. I remember being on our honeymoon, being on all kinds of vacations where it's like, oh, this is nice for like 8 seconds. And then I'm like thinking about everything I have to do and all these things. And like, I call it like seek and destroy in my brain where one worry has kind of been resolved. And then my brain is searching for the next thing it can latch onto and figure out why I should be worrying about it.
Yeah.
And that's in some ways, I think, in some ways, it's maybe a little bit why you can find like tangible success because you're just always you have that
absolutely.
drive
For sure.
But again, it's not binary, right? It's like how do you harness that, but also be able to like function and be happy and calm sometimes.
Yeah.
And it's like, can you have both? I hope you can have both. I think I've felt both before.
Yeah.
But I don't have like an amazing answer to that question because it's hard.
Yeah.
It's hard to just like sit there and live with my thoughts and not like get up and act on something. But I think I would be better off for it and more refreshed and ready to go when it is an appropriate time to be like doing stuff.
Yeah.
If I was better at I guess relaxing. I don't know. Like the massage thing and the ocean thing are like literally exact examples that I have experienced myself. And maybe she's a better person to talk about this with because
I don't know.
She can't relate. We are yin and yang, which is great.
Yeah.
But
I mean, it's interesting to hear both of your perspectives because when I hit a massage table, I'm out. You know, I'm like, bye-bye, you know, and also at the ocean. I think that it perhaps might have something to do with your sensory intake and how you perceive the world around you. Because for me personally, I have a lot of things going in my mind all the time, but I am so overcome with inspiration when I am still. That is when my cup fills.
Right.
see, I think for me, I find that when I'm like on a long run or
Yes.
like my body is moving,
Yes.
but that's actually one of the best times I can calm down a little bit is like if I go, I'm going to run for like 8 miles.
Yeah.
And like by the time I'm halfway in, I'm like getting ideas and I'm putting them into my voice memo and like, but it's not in a bad way. It's in just like, I'm letting things come in
Reflective,
and I
yeah.
can finally
You
sort
feel
of-
free.
Yeah. So for me, yeah. And you know, it's funny. My sister is like us and I'll send her like memes that are like, oh, you know, it's time to relax. Can I figure out a way to do this more productively?
Yeah.
And I'm the opposite, you know, and I will tell Dan, I'll say there's too much,
Yeah.
you know, like I need to just take a minute and take 2 hours to have unstructured time My time can be, in order for me to be productive working and all these things, I understand that I have to have some structure that I have to implement, but I see them as pillars, right? Kind of, and then have to be very unstructured in between, at least part of the time now. I understand that's not reality every day, especially since having a child, right? So, and I know you have 4, so I can't even imagine the level. But speaking of the binary thing, having a baby taught me that. Because you're in mess, like constantly. There is no one way or the other, or this way and that way anymore. It's like one great thing might happen, but then your baby wakes you up in the middle of the night sick, and you're like, oh my God, never again am I gonna have just like clarity, and one thing will be good and then everything else around me will be good. It's like you have to learn this new chapter of, life is a mess all the time, and you're only trying to do your best every day to have these sort of practices and these mindsets to keep yourself propped up while the rest of it can be chaos. And so it's been an interesting, really challenging 2 years to live through this growth pattern of like, oh my God, because we're used to like being in some sort of a certain element of control. I think before this chapter happens, and then all of a sudden you're like, oh my God, I'm on this crazy ride and everything's just coming at me, and it's okay. Like, how do you learn that to live in the gray? Like exactly like you're saying. And so it's just been such a fascinating conversation, because it gives me the reminder that when you are out in the world, when we are out in the world, when we're leading, when we're engaging, when we're collaborating, everybody's different, right? And so how do you learn how to move toward your higher purpose and how to act in your higher purpose? And for me personally, we were in LA the past couple of years, choosing to come back to San Antonio. The higher purpose is kind of exactly in the same vein that you are. It's the positive impact on our city, in whatever it is that we're doing in our medium and our creativity and our business. What are we contributing toward? Who are we collaborating with? How are we creating opportunities for other people? But everybody is different and does see things differently. So it's just been such a fascinating conversation, because I look at you, who is leading these really large organizations. And I think, man, how does he do it? How does he stay like so present and joyful and kind, right? Because there's a lot of pressure, and you have crazy schedules probably, and your days look totally different, and they're high pressure. And so I really have appreciated this conversation to hear your perspective and how you kind of keep yourself centered on a day-to-day basis. And I know it's been hugely enlightening for Dan.
Yes. Well, it's so nice to hear that I'm not the only one that like operates this way. I mean, I just related to everything you said, like so on such a fundamental level. And I appreciate you being honest about stuff like that, because I think there's a lot of people out there that will get a lot of perspective and be helped by what you talked about and how you approach things. And that I think one of the most powerful things you talked about was that your default isn't how you try to live. And,
right.
You know what I mean? And I think
most people,
it's like if you just give into like your basic fundamental thought every day, it might lead you to a stressful place, to spiral, to whatever. But if you can be more present and intentional and set a foundation of like doing the right things and then having ways of thinking about things and knowing it's gonna revert back, but that you can still get it to move forward, and thinking about goal setting differently. Like, these are things people don't talk about, and I think just everyone assumes, well, I'm just this way and there's nothing I can do. It's like that's not true. There's so much more, and there's different ways of thinking about things and being productive and knowing, like showing yourself grace and knowing you might revert sometimes and you might still spiral and all these things. But
you have to take action. You have to be the one to take action.
Revert to action. That was one of, I mean, you had so many lines. I'm going to go back and listen to this and write down so many of these lines, but like reverting to action is so huge, because that is, and not to like the extreme where, you're sitting on a beach at vacation, you feel like you have to take action. But I also find that our minds go crazy, and all we really need to do is sit down and do something.
Sure.
And it kind of like, it's like a stress release valve to do that. And I think people forget that. It's really easy to forget that. So I have one more question unrelated to all of this stuff. I'm just curious, when so you're at the NBA draft lottery, and you find out you got the number 1 pick, and it's going to be Victor Wembanyama. What does that feel like?
it's like another area where I was doing all of the things to not be nervous.
Yeah.
But as it was building and as I was, like it's a TV event.
Of course.
And so you sit there and you wait.
Yeah.
And you wait some more, then you wait some more, and then there's a commercial break. And I'm a fidgeter. And so a friend of mine, I've lost like 4 of them, but gives me these golden keys. They're actual, like, I rub them off. So like, they're like metal after a minute.
Yeah.
But so I had that with me just to fidget because I knew like I'd be like people would think something's wrong with that guy.
Yeah.
Like, and so I was rubbing that and I was like, trying to stay present. And like, as it was going, I was thinking, we're not going to get it. That's really what I was thinking.
Mm-hmm.
But I was reminding, we have another friend, it's really one of my wife's best friends. And like a month before, she said, just like and she's like a pretty quiet person and not really a, conversation instigator or whatever.
Yeah.
We somehow came up, oh, you're going to go to Chicago. Oh, you're going to do. And she said, we're getting the number 1 pick. And I said,
When people like that say stuff, you believe them, right?
no, I didn't like it. I was like, why? Why are you saying that? What do you like? I feel like you're gonna jinx us. Like, all the weird things, all these rules were popped up. And then she said, you just don't worry. Like, I've visualized this, and we're getting the number 1 pick. Don't worry about it.
Yeah.
And so like that, she would just pop into my head, and and I was like so thankful that I had this again, like back to like people in your life, and that like there's all these little doors that open, and most times they're via people. My experience for me, I'm sure other people, there's other examples of these little doors opening, but for me, a lot of times it's these people, and that would pop into my head. But if I'm being honest, like I was nervous. I was nervous, and so I think my silly response of like getting excited was really that pent up nervousness. I was nervous, and I just really I like believe in the law of attraction. I do that, like you do enough good things will happen, and so I like believe that. But in the moment, that critic would pop up, right, and that cynic would pop up and say like, we're not going to get it, and I just it felt so right, and so that when that kind of firework supports what feels right, it just is it's a doubly amazing sensation. And there's just so many people that in the organization, in the community, that are working so hard and thinking regularly of like, how can the Spurs be better? How can the Spurs be of service? How can and so those people being rewarded for that is in these, whether it's a little thing or a big thing, is makes me feel a lot of joy and fulfillment. So that's what I felt. I felt joy.
Yeah. As you should have. Yeah, absolutely. Well, I grew up in the 90s as a Bulls fan in Chicago with Jordan in it. Yeah. But I will say the Bulls will always have a special place in my heart. But man, I'm on the Spurs wagon. And I already was. And we were introduced by Sean Elliott and his wife, Claudia.
Oh, really?
Elliott. Yeah, they introduced us blind date. Like, so that set me off on my Spurs journey. But after talking to you, it's like, it's over the top. I'm 100% in Spurs Nation. Let's go.
That's the only reason I came here. Just to convince you.
I was like 95%. I'm at 100 now. So, but in all seriousness, this was like an absolutely incredible conversation. I could not imagine having more like poignant thoughts come from somebody related to Happy Not Satisfied, and all these like achievements are byproducts of the process, and there is no end, and like setting the foundation of wellness, these things that we're so passionate about. Hearing from you, who obviously is in very successful leadership position, and we didn't really talk about leadership a lot, but it's very apparent that you take that seriously and that you're a service leader, and I have no doubt that's how you've helped build and sustain the culture at these organizations. So thank you for taking some time out of your busy schedule to talk with us. I don't know if you have anything to add, but I'm on cloud nine over here. Yeah.
Truly, that was so wonderful. Such an an amazing conversation. And I know I have a lot of takeaways, and I think a lot of other people will find them too. So thank you. Thank you, Peter, for sitting down with us.
You're welcome.
We really
Happy to be
appreciate
here.
it.
It's fun.
Go Spurs, go.
Go Spurs, go.
Thanks, man.